gymnastics skill seekers. I wanted to start to share a little bit of my training journey, where I'm currently at, what I'm currently working on, what I'm struggling with, just so you can get a bit of an insight into my training. And I hope it inspires you with your own training. I'm about to start a new phase of training with both my mobility coach and my gymnastic strength training coach. So I thought now would be a good time to talk about those sessions. So right now I'm going to aim to train Monday, Wednesday, Friday and combine flexibility and strength into one session. These are going to be long sessions. They're roughly 2 hours. It takes me to go through this session. And then on a Sunday, I'm just going to do a straight up mobility session that'll last about an hour. So first time through it, this is just one day. It's combining some pike flexibility, and it's also combining the gymnastic strength session of press to handstand and handstand push-ups. So they go well together. Obviously with the press to handstand, we need to have sort of good core compression. We want to lengthen out that posterior chain, which is what pike flexibility is giving us. So starting with the pike flexibility session and then moving into that strength session. So I start the session with some weighted leg kicks. The idea is to pause for 1 second at the top of each repetition. I've got 2 kilo weights, ankle weights on each foot. And this is just a good way to get the hip flexors moving, to stretch out the hamstrings a little bit, to get the glutes working with hip abduction. So that's at the start of my session. I then move into an eagle hang. A lot of people get this one wrong. A lot of my clients get this wrong even when I send them a video, but the idea is the pinky fingers are facing inwards towards each other and the thumbs are on the outside. So it can be a tough grip to get into. You need to have a certain level of shoulder mobility. But then we just hang in this position. I find it a great stretch down, so sort of through serratus. I feel a little bit of pec, I feel a little bit of lat. And I find that moving into a tuck position gives you a better posterior pelvic tilt, so it also increases the stretch on the lat there just a little bit. So after that, I move into my pike flexibility. Now for me, when I do my pike right now, I'm feeling tightness, mainly in the outer hip and also in my calves. So the accessory work around my pike right now with 30 is to target the piriformis and the glutes, and to also work on stretching out the calves just a little bit. So I'm starting here with a piriformis stretch. There's a video for this on the Sustainable Training. I've got videos for most of these exercises on the Sustainable Training YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out. So the idea of this is to be kneeling on the ground, to cross the legs over, to try and lengthen through the spine, so be pushing tall with the head and bringing the chest towards that front shin. And also having the shoulders sort of parallel, so there's this twisting going on, and also trying to close the angle there. So just hunt around, play around in that position, try and find the best angle to stretch out the piriformis there. And that's being supersetted with a seated single leg knee extension. So crushing the yoga block here and pulling the thigh into the chest so we can hold that upright position of the leg, and then just working on straightening the leg. So it's about contracting the quads. So we're working on shortening the quads here, and that's a part of obviously flexibility, is strengthen the front side while also stretching the hamstring. So holding that block between the thigh and the chest is helping to get a good stretch on the hamstring as I straighten the leg. And I also sometimes find in my pancake that my knees are slightly bent, so just working on building that straight leg strength and working on that quad contracting nice and hard coming out of that. So a bit of flexibility and strength in that exercise. I do 3 sets of that, so it's 3 sets of the piriformis stretch, roughly 30 to 45 seconds on each side, and then I'm doing sort of 8 to 10 leg extensions on each leg. My second thing is stretching the calf. So what I'm doing here is combining a bent knee and straight knee calf stretch. So moving in and out of that, trying to get a good stretch. I'm just standing on a parallel there, so it goes under the ball of the feet. It's a nice rounded edge, so I feel it's quite good underfoot. And yeah, just hanging out at the end, just some isometric stuff. So I do repetitions of bent knee to straight leg, and then just hanging out with the bent knee, a good sort of 45 seconds there on each side. That's superset with the main part of the flexibility stretch right now, or main part of my pike session right now is the head to toe. I'm definitely getting closer with this, and again for me right now I'm feeling that mainly in my calf, and I'm feeling also sort of outer hip. So I've got some pulses to do here, and then sort of an isometric hold on the last repetition. I find that how I set up for this head to toe makes a big difference. So I play around and just sort of spend a bit of time setting up for that before I go into it. Right now, I'm locking my index finger around the base of my big toe, and I can sort of touch the knuckle of my thumb as I pull down. So there's only a couple of centimeters to go before I can hopefully get my head to toe, but it's a lot further. It feels like miles to go. So slow and steady. Hopefully by the end of this 6-week phase, I'll be a little bit closer. That's the mobility done. So now I'm going to warm up for my strength session. So we're starting with scapular work. We've got scapular push-ups. We've got scapular rows. I'm then doing some scapular dips. Then I'm moving into some scapular pull-ups, and it's all about just building some straight arm strength, really working on those shoulders and just making them stronger. A lot of the foundation stuff, you just got to do a lot of it. I find that doing it in the warm-up works really well. Moving into a bottom of a ring dip hold. There's 30 seconds in the bottom of this dip, and that's just preparing the shoulders for the handstand push-up work to come in the session. Then moving to do some ring rows. It's just 15 reps of ring rows. Then a bit of a rope climb in the straddle position right now. My coach is not really programming how I climb the rope. He just says climb the rope. So I think the rope's very underrated for upper body pulling strength. Great for grip, great if you want to start training towards the one arm chin up. A lot of good benefits from rope climbs. Then it's just like a handstand form check. So it's just kicking up into handstand and holding a handstand. Then from there, I'm just doing, it's sort of like an L-sit to stand, also known as sort of a Durant press. I could go a little bit lower here, but I'm just linking the reps together. And for me to set up the other setup that I've got for Durant's press takes a bit of time. So I just do the P-bars, rock backwards and forwards there. It's just building the straight arm strength, scapular depression and protraction, getting ready for the press to handstand. Some front lever stuff. It's just all one sort of set of these, and this is just part of the warm-up. So there's just a tuck front lever hold. These will also add towards the other goals that I'm working towards, which I'll talk about in another video. So yeah, just that front lever tuck hold. Then I'm moving into some wide grip pull-ups there. It's only 6 reps. Then I'm working into some hanging leg raises. My coach says 15 reps, but I'm just doing like 3 sets of 5 at the moment. Just working on better form, but he's also asking me to do 3 sets of the L-sit on the floor for roughly 15 seconds. So I just bounce backwards and forwards between the two. The L-sit's very much a short hip flexor range of motion there, and just being able to hold that. And then obviously trying to relax the shoulders as much as I can in that hanging leg raise. And it's more of a full range of motion in terms of the hip flexors there. So now we move into the main part of the gymnastics strength session. I've got 5 sets to do of sort of like an L-sit press to handstand, but there's a pause in the middle. So I'm working an L-sit pressing to stand. The idea is to be able to press and stand on a surface that's just as high as the P-bars, but I haven't quite got that pressing strength. This is the first week of this block, so I'm just pressing as high as I can and then bending the knees, taking the feet on top of that elevated surface. Then from there, I get a little bit of a pause, and then I'm just going to do a straddle press to handstand, and then on the way down, I'm opening up and coming back down through to the L-sit. So 5 sets of that. Yeah, it went pretty well. I had a few sets where I probably fell out of the handstand. I had one really good set where I took the yoga blocks off, and the height of the elevated surface was slightly lower than the P-bars, but I nearly managed to press to that. But then I fell out of the handstand, which was a bummer. And then the next one, I couldn't quite press my feet from the L-sit to the stand, but the press to handstand was quite good. So 5 sets of that went pretty well considering it was week 1. Between the sets of L-sit press to handstand, I've been including a Jefferson curl, a wall-assisted Jefferson curl. So I'm standing with my back against the wall, and I'm working on spinal flexion. So segment by segment, I'm rolling down, and then I'm working on the anterior pelvic tilt. I'm closing the angle between my torso and my thighs at the bottom there. So it's a good sort of pike stretch. And then I'm reversing that, so moving into posterior pelvic tilt and then extending the spine vertebrae by vertebrae as I roll back up in that Jefferson curl. Now my coach hasn't put this in the program, he's just put have a rest, but I find that this movement, this Jefferson curl, really helps me with my press to handstand form. So we can think about it as being very similar to the press to handstand. Okay, in the Jefferson curl, my feet stay on the floor and I'm working the upper body up and down. And in the press handstand, my hands stay on the floor and I'm working the lower body up and down. But really the same movement happens. We're starting in that deep Jefferson curl, or in that deep sort of pike position with the back slightly rounded. We're opening the shoulders and pressing up. So we're bringing the torso towards the thighs and thinking about that core compression. And then we're working on the anterior to posterior pelvic tilt and reversing that as we come down. So we start in that posterior pelvic tilt in our straight handstand, we tilt to an anterior pelvic tilt as we bring the legs down, and then we're rolling through the spine as I start to bring the legs through, so we're getting that spinal flexion as I move down into that L-sit. So the movements are very closely related, and it definitely improves my form if I spend time doing the Jefferson curl between sets of the L-sit press to handstand. And then after that, I've got 5 sets of eccentric handstand push-ups. Now, it's been a while since I've worked these. I did actually get the eccentric handstand push-up up to around about 30 seconds eccentric, but I've never been able to do a freestanding concentric. But this is the first week back to, in a long time, doing eccentric handstand push-ups. I find on the P-bars, they're a lot harder. I find on the floor, with your hands flat on the floor, it's a little bit easier in terms of the strength and the position. The P-bars just challenge you. It's more depth, obviously, but it's also, I think, less room for error. You've got to be pretty spot on with the wrist work to keep the balance. So first week of this, it was okay. I managed to control the eccentric, but I wouldn't rave about the eccentric time. My coach has asked me to do 5 sets of 3. I'm struggling to do sort of 5 sets of 2 at the moment, so I'm just kicking up, trying to do 2. I find if I kick up for the 3rd rep with roughly 15 seconds rest between each rep, I just don't have anything left right now to be able to control the eccentric. I fall down pretty much straight away. So they went all right. I did about 4 sets of 2, and then on the last set, it was just a set of 1. And I was pretty tired after that, so a couple of hours of training, getting in those reps in terms of the flexibility work and the strength work, and yeah, that's week 1 of a 6-week block, and hopefully see some progress as we work through this. Got any questions or comments about my training, feel free to leave questions and comments. If there's anything in particular you want to focus on or talk about, let me know, and I might make a specific video about that part of my training. Otherwise, I'm just going to see how these vlogs go in terms of my training. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this, and yeah, good luck with your own training.